Hey everyone, I'm April. I'm the owner and creator over at 'Tis So Sweet. I make custom bags, purses, totes, zipper pouches, and other unique handmade items. I love all things Disney and absolutely enjoy making bags that bring joy to your heart and a smile to your face. If you would like to follow me in my shop, you can find me over on Instagram at 'Tis So Sweet. I'd love to connect with you and get to know you. Now that we've gotten to know each other some, I would like to welcome you to our Sewing 101 series here on Auntie Tay's YouTube channel. In this series, we will be going over the basics. I'm talking from the ground up. We will be going over how to navigate your sewing machine, how to read a basic sewing pattern, basic sewing lingo, and so much more. So, with all that being said, let's get sewing. Let's talk about 5 scary things about sewing. Sewing with a zipper is one of the top things that people in the sewing community are afraid of, which is actually kind of funny because it was the very first thing that I sewed with. My very first project was a zipper pouch. I had no clue it was something to be afraid of. So let me give you some tips that I've learned along the way. First and foremost, use a zipper foot. And if your machine didn't come with a zipper foot, I encourage you to go on Amazon or wherever, maybe to your local quilt shop, and see if you can find a narrow zipper foot that will fit your machine. That is something that looks like this. This helped me tremendously because it allows you to get really close to your zipper or to the edge of your fabric. That way it helps installing the zipper go smoothly. Also, stick to the seam allowance. I know it's going to be hard and you're going to be afraid that you're going to hit the teeth and stuff like that, but I promise you, if you measure out your seam allowance and stick to your seam allowance, then you will have no problem installing your zipper. And honestly, the best advice I can give you is go slow. I'm going to say that a lot in these 5 scary things because if you just go slow and take your time and be patient with yourself, you're going to be able to be successful. The next scary thing that I always hear about is top stitching. Don't be afraid of top stitching. All it takes is practice. Practice, practice, practice. The reason for top stitching is not only to finish off your project and make it look professional, but it's also to hold down the seams that are inside your project. So if you're scared of it, please don't skip it. It is vital to the final construction of your project. Here are some tips that I've picked up along the way. Find a seam guide or an edge foot that fits your machine. These seam guides or the edge foot will allow you to have some sort of barrier or guide to let you know where to put your material for your top stitching, and you can follow that very closely. Also, use the seam guide that's on your needle plate. So if you don't have an edge foot or a seam guide, then you can use those lines that are on your needle plate in order to guide you through your top stitching. Top stitching is normally an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Sometimes 1/4 of an inch will do, but most of the time it's 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that is super small, so you'll definitely need maybe some washi tape on your needle plate. That way you've got a good guide of where that 1/8 of an inch seam allowance is in your project. If your machine has the capability of changing your stitch length, then I encourage you to change it to a longer stitch length. This helps your machine go over those layers, and it also looks super professional when you have longer stitches rather than short stitches. Also, make sure you have a matching thread color. This will hide any small mistakes that you make, and it'll look super cute. Once you've got the hang of top stitching, I encourage you to try out contrasting thread. That actually looks super cool, but it is kind of, intimidating at first. But once you get the hang of it, it's gonna look great in the finished project. So be precise and go slow. I can't stress this enough. Go slow when you're top stitching. This way, it's not going to be wavy or anything like that. Everything will be nice and even and smooth. The third thing is hardware. Now, the reason why that some people are afraid of hardware is because there's so much of it out there. So what do I buy? What size do I get? What color do I get? I don't know. Well, here's the thing. Let's go through a couple of facts about the hardware that I use in most of my bags. I hardly ever make a bag without using a zipper, so let's go over those first. Honestly, when I was reading bag patterns, the zipper part was probably one of the most confusing parts for me. So this is a number 3 zipper. This is what you'll see in zipper pouches and small zipper pockets inside of your bags. What makes it a number 3 is that it is 1 inch wide and it has smaller teeth. This is also the same type of zipper that maybe you would see an invisible zipper in the store. And that is where the teeth are on the inside of the zipper tape and not on top like this one. So if you're making a zipper pouch, the number 3 zippers is what you're gonna want. Here is a number 5 zipper. Now these are also known as handbag zippers. That's where the teeth are wide and actually the zipper tape equals out to 1.25 inches, or sometimes even 1.5 inches wide. These are the zippers that I use for my main closures on my bags. Now let's talk about the zipper teeth. So these 2 zippers are nylon zippers. So the nylon zipper teeth you can sew through with your machine and not have to worry about it. Now if these were metal zipper teeth, that means that your needle will not go through them. Metal does not give way, so you won't be able to sew through them. So a fun part of zippers that I've come across recently is that you can purchase zipper tape that are really long and come with maybe 15 pulls. That way you can put your own pulls on your zipper tapes. While the zipper tape and zipper pulls are a little bit extra work in your project, they are super cute and they put a really awesome final touch to your project. Let's talk about D-rings and swivel hooks. These 2 things are very helpful for wristlets or crossbody straps. They come in all different sizes, so you'll need to reference your pattern in order to see what your pattern is calling for. Then you have rectangle rings and slide adjusters. These are going to help you when you are doing a crossbody strap on a bag. They also come in lots of different shapes and sizes, so reference your pattern and see what it calls for. Now let's talk about the fancy stuff. I'm talking about rivets, tassels, and purse feet. So these 3 things are something that I have just recently added into my bags, and it makes them look like they were store-bought. Rivets are now one of my favorite things to install on my bags. You can find rivet kits on Amazon or from different places like camsnaps.com. Now I know sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming, but I normally use anywhere from an 8mm rivet to a 9mm rivet. Tassels are really fun and easy to make, and they bring an extra little something to a bag, and you can also toss these in as a free gift when you are gifting somebody a bag. Purse feet are also super great for bag making because it gives your bag that extra stability to where it won't fall over. The 4th scary thing about sewing is sewing circles and curves. Curves are sewn in bags and as well as clothing and quilting, so curves and circles come up a lot in sewing. Some of the best tips that I have learned so far in my sewing career is to go slow. I know I've said that a lot and I will probably continue saying it, but go slow. Follow the guides on your needle plate. Then once you have your circle or your curve sewn, what you want to do before you do anything else is just make small little clips or slits along the curve. This way, when you turn your project right side out or you fold it over like in a quilt, then that will allow your fabrics to give a little bit more in the curve and allow it to curve more smoothly. And last but not least, let's talk about seam ripping. Now I know that this seam ripper seems very scary when you look at it, but it is a great tool to have in your sewing room. Now I seam rip 2 different ways. If it's a mistake that I've made and I need to hurry up and take it out and my mistake is really not going to be seen and I can cover it up by more stitches, then I take the seam ripper like this, I put it inside and I just push it straight through. Now, if I've messed up something like top stitching, I take my time. I go stitch by stitch from the top and I take out each and every stitch. That way I can pull the thread out nice and easy, and that way I can re-top stitch and you never even knew that I had messed up. Now with this pointy end right here, it is very easy to slip and poke through your fabrics and actually cut your fabric, so be careful as you are doing this. Now, let's sew a simple zipper pouch so we can put these 5 scary things behind us. I have 2 different fabrics here that we're going to cut from. We're going to cut 2 from this fabric and 2 for this fabric. This is going to be my outside fabric and this is going to be my lining fabric. I also have an 8-inch zipper here. Now we are going to take this pattern piece and we are going to trace it onto the back of the fabrics. We're going to draw 2 on this fabric and 2 on this fabric. I'm going to be using a friction marker so we can erase these lines with a touch of an iron. Now that we have these traced out, let's go ahead and cut them out with our scissors. You can also use this pattern piece with a rotary blade by laying it down on the fabrics and then taking your rotary blade and carefully cutting around it. Now we're going to take one of our exterior pieces in the zipper and we're going to center it up on here and clip it together. Now if you don't have clips, you can use pins. I'm just so used to using clips, they're just super easy to work with. So let's go ahead and clip this together with the zipper centered on our pattern piece. Now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to baste on this exterior fabric to our zipper. This will allow for the exterior panel to be tacked on to the zipper so we can put the lining on in the next step. We're going to use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, so we're going to be really close to the edge of our fabric, but not too close so that we don't fall off the edge. Now as we get close to the zipper pull, we're going to stop with our needle in the down position, lift the presser foot, and pull the zipper pull past our needle. It is super important that your needle is in the down position so that when you go to pull your zipper, you don't lose your spot and your stitches don't get wonky. Next, we're going to grab our lining piece and we're going to clip it together or pin it together just like we did with our exterior piece. Now let's take this to the sewing machine and let's use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. This way, our previous stitches will be caught within our seam allowance and won't be seen. Next, we're going to use our iron and press these fabrics away from the zipper teeth. Once you have it pressed, let's take it back to the sewing machine and let's top stitch. Now, like I said before, if your machine is able to adjust your stitch length, let's adjust our stitch length to a little bit longer of a stitch. Here on my dial, I'm going to switch it over to here. For the top stitching, we're going to maintain an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, check it out. You're halfway done. Now let's do the other side. Same steps, we're just going to repeat. Okay, so check this out. Since we top stitched here, it caught the lining fabric on the underside, so that way when we are opening our zipper, open and closed, that lining fabric is not going to get caught in our zipper. So top stitching is a little bit more than just the final details. It also helps in construction. All right, now that we've got both sides done, we're going to open it up to where the exterior pieces are laying right sides together and the lining pieces are laying right sides together. Also, open up your zipper about halfway. That way you have room to reach in and pull it right side out when it's time. Now we are going to clip or pin all the way around the outer edge of our zipper pouch. This will keep everything in place as we take it to the sewing machine to sew it up. Now, here on the lining, we need to mark an opening so that way we can turn everything right sides out once we're done sewing the edges. Let's mark a 4-inch opening. We are going to start sewing here at this mark, sew all the way around, and stop here. Now when we start and stop, we're going to backstitch a couple times, that way it secures the stitching. Now, if you're using a zipper like I am, you have these two metal stops on either side of the zipper. So when you are going over this spot right here, you're going to slowly go and feel to make sure that you're not going to hit that metal stop with your needle. All right, let's take it to the sewing machine. As you are sewing around these curves, remember, go slow and stay within your seam allowance. We are using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance here. Now that we've got it all the way sewn around, we're going to make a couple clips along the curves. That way, when we turn it right side out, we can smooth out these edges nice and smooth. All right, carefully reach in through the opening and grab the other side of your exterior fabric and slowly work your way to where you're pulling it through that opening right side out. Once you have it all the way pulled out, grab your chopstick or your purple thing and let's smooth out these edges. Before we tuck everything in, let's close up the opening in the lining. So stick your fingers inside the opening and kind of smooth out the edges of the fabric. You can even iron this right here, that way the seams lay down flat so you can take it to the sewing machine. Once you have the opening kind of flattened out, take some pins or some clips and secure it. We are going to use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to close up this hole. Now that the opening in your lining is closed, let's push this inside the exterior and zip up the top. Your zipper pouch might be a little bit wrinkly after turning it right side out, so you can always run an iron over it just to get all the wrinkles out, and then you're done. Well, thanks so much for joining me today on Sewing 101 here on Auntie Tay's YouTube channel. I'm April from 'Tis So Sweet, and I'll see you later.